The following is an AZPM original production.
For AZPM, I'm Mark McLemore, and this is Arizona Spotlight. Coming up, find out what was happening in the local region during the events of the Revolutionary War. A conversation with Dr. Gary Auerbach about photographing and interviewing Indigenous people from the Southwest for a book called We Walk in Beauty. Film essayist Chris Dashiell offers his thoughts on Mexico's submission to the next Academy Awards. It's a film called We Shall Not Be Moved. And Tucson-based musician Clay Dudash of the Manor shares about the journey to becoming one of the bands at this weekend's DUSK Music Festival. Those stories are next on Arizona Spotlight. The latest miniseries produced by documentarian Ken Burns is The American Revolution. While big things were happening in the colonies of the East Coast, what was going on in the Southwest? We'll find out some answers next in this conversation hosted by Tony Paniagua.
Mauro Trejo IV, you are a public historian right here in Tucson and Southern Arizona. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I find it fascinating that you as a historian have a lot of history to talk about when it comes to your family here in Southern Arizona. Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yes, I am a seventh generation Tucsonense. My family has been here. The furthest back I can trace direct lineage is to 1780 in Tucson's Presidio. I had a great-great-great-grandmother that was born there. And then the family's been in the same desert for a couple hundred years before that, in Ures and Sonora.
Why do you think it's so important for people to spend some time and analyze history, specifically when we're speaking about a particular region where they live?
Well, for me, I think the connection is obvious. Why I'm so interested in Tucson's history is because it is my history as well, and the history of my family. But I think especially right now, it's been a focus for me most of my life, making sure that these narratives that have been so long, hard fought to maintain and to bring to the forefront, I think narratives that were traditionally overlooked. Tucson, considered by many to be the oldest continuously inhabited site in the United States, one of the oldest ones in North America, evidence of agriculture going back about 4,100 years, no break in the archaeological record. The oldest irrigation canals in North America have been located here in Tucson. So the importance of the history here is, it can't be overstated. People have been here for a very long time.
U.S. is becoming independent in 1776. Tucson had already been established officially in 1775. What was the situation like back then, 1700s, here in this part of the world?
Well, in the 1700s, you have a whole lot going on in the world. Tucson and Tubac before it, very isolated, about the end of Spain's empire, the northern edge of their frontier, really the end of the world for them. Tubac had been established in 1752. In 1775, they make the decision to move that fort up to the location in Tucson. Tucson was incredibly successful, lasted for 80 years as a presidio through the remainder of the Spanish era and then through the entirety of the Mexican era here. In 1775, the order was signed. People don't actually begin to move up. The soldiers don't move up until 1776. Europeans. Again, there was already a Pima or an Otham village on the other side of the river from where the presidio would ultimately be. That had been there for a very long time. It's the little village of Chucshon that Father Kino had established a mission complex at in the 1690s.
So what was happening back then with the Revolutionary War and Tucson, or at least the people in this region? Did they contribute? Did Spain help out? What happened?
They did. So most of what is today North America and South America was owned by Spain and under Spanish control. The French were here as well. And then, of course, you had the British colonists, the American colonists that were there as well. But Spain, being a traditional enemy of Britain, when the American colonists decided to take up arms against Britain, Spain contributed to that. They had a common enemy in the Brits, and the King of Spain, King Carlos III, implemented a tax, a donativo it was called. People of Tucson, the presidial soldiers here, over the course of a few years, donated about 459 silver pesos to Spain is paying itself to offset the cost of their involvement in the war. I've heard people say that they were actually donating it to the revolutionary cause. They were paying a tax is what they were doing. It wasn't like they were presenting an oversized check at a golf tournament to, the colonists. They were paying a tax for it. And this tax was throughout most of New Spain was having to pay this tax as well, because Spain was very, very involved in the American Revolutionary War, as was France. So instrumental in winning the war.
And paradoxically, or ironically perhaps, choose the word, Spain was helping the American revolutionary people, not knowing that in the future, their Spanish colonies were also going to be seeking an independence.
So one of the other things that Spain is doing in the 1770s is 1760s, they make a decision to create a standing army in Mexico. They'd never had that before. And by the time Spain moves a presidio up to Tucson, they're 250 years into the conquest of Mexico. So the people that are moving up are already mestizos. It's not the same people that set foot on mainland Mexico in 1519. When they decide to make that standing army, they're concerned because that army could very easily turn against them. And by 1810, you have the beginnings of the Mexican War for Independence. So the people that really kind of turned around and bit was the Mexican people afterwards. So the country of Mexico. In the mid-1830s, they see Texas settlers turn against them and declare themselves an independent nation with the support of the United States.
You say there was something to learn about the role of the Apaches during that time.
So the Apaches dominate life out here in Tucson, in southern Arizona, really throughout what is today the American Southwest and northern Mexico, for about 250 years. They dominate everything, specifically in Tucson. Even before the Spanish get here, they are having a huge impact on the life of the O'odham that are here. They affect everything from our agriculture, our architecture, our clothing, our national loyalties even. Into the American era, one of the reasons we go Confederate here in Tucson is because of the Apache. We thought the Confederates would give us more support there. The Apache are just given such short shrift today in museums, in native land dedications. They're not mentioned. They're left out by just about every organization, even inclusive, liberal organizations that probably consider themselves very inclusive. They leave the Apache out. They're just not mentioned. Normally because the native lands dedication is normally just a boilerplate. It's the same everywhere you go. But they're just left out. God, in the mid-1830s, there are as many Apache here as there are Mexicans in O'odham. And they are Apache that are living here defending the settlement against other Apaches.
And then finally, Mauro, as people read books or watch television programs or hear radio stories about the U.S. Revolution, what would you like them to consider? What would you like them to reflect on?
The United States is a patchwork, a quiltwork of different peoples. Certainly my history does not go back to the American Revolution. I am American, however. One of the things the civil rights movement gave many people in the U.S. was the right to call themselves American as well. And that's where the hyphenated Americans comes in, which wasn't meant to be divisive. It was meant to be more inclusive, to say that we too are Americans, rather than being subjugated or left out of a lot of the narratives or part of what our contribution as Black people, as Mexican Americans, as Latin Americans, as Asian Americans, as women. All of these people that contributed to the building of this country, our contributions are just as significant, if not more so in certain cases. I think all of those things are incredibly significant to remember as we celebrate the 250th of the American Revolution and the independence of the United States. We're people from everywhere. The more perspectives that you include in telling the story of the United States, the more accurate a representation you're going to get of our actual history.
Mauro Trejo IV, a public historian here in Tucson. Thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Seventh-generation Tucsonan Mauro Trejo IV is involved with many local organizations, and he leads some historic walking tours. We have links on the Spotlight page. Ken Burns' 6-part PBS miniseries, The American Revolution, begins on Sunday, November 16th at 8 p.m. The full schedule is available at azpm.org. My next guest is Dr. Gary Auerbach, an avid photographer and a retired chiropractor who is now 77 years old. He embarked on an ambitious project in the early 2000s. He met with 44 indigenous people from across the Southwest, all from different walks of life. Auerbach would take their portrait and ask them 5 simple questions. The resulting book was printed in a limited edition in 2005. It's called We Walk in Beauty, and it celebrates the diversity and vitality of Native experiences. Joining Dr. Auerbach in this interview is one of the book's biggest fans, Gary Hoffman. Originally from Wisconsin, Hoffman would like to bring the story behind the book to other mediums. Gary Auerbach begins.
It's important for me to know the people that I'm photographing. And so I would dig and try to find out questions that brought them to the table with their thoughts and ideas. It quickly turned into a larger project than I had thought.
I think it's really interesting that you chose 5 questions and you asked your subjects the same questions.
Right.
How did you choose these 5 questions?
Actually, I interviewed with a woman by the name of Ophelia Zapata.
She's well known at the University of Arizona.
Yeah, she's well known. She's a MacArthur Fellow and very intelligent. And so I spoke with her and I posed these 5 questions, and she had response to each one, either liking it or not liking it. So it wasn't a fait accompli on my part, that my questions were taken individually and verbatim.
And Gary Hoffman, would you read the 5 questions for us? Would
Sure.
you let our audience know
I'd
what
love to
those
do
were?
that. The first question is, do you have a specific memory that stands out in your mind when you were young? Second question is, how is your life different from your parents or grandparents? Third question is, what traditions from the past do you still continue to practice? Fourth question is, what was your impression on having your photograph taken? And the fifth is, what do you see for the future?
What do you think is something that you took away from doing this project, some way that it might have changed you, Dr. Auerbach?
I had no idea what kind of answers I was going to be getting from these individuals. They're all Native American persons, so they all have a fundamental background as far as their education, how they were allowed to function within our society, what it is the difference of the 2 worlds, the world of common man and our civilization and the world of the native person. They're different.
There's a photograph of a woman that graces the cover of the book, and I know she's one of the subjects that you interviewed. Tell us a little bit about her.
It's Ruth Benelli, a Navajo woman about 85 years of age, very traditional oriented, and her answers are always covering the area of her life. So if you want to open to her page and just give a couple references.
Yes. The question is, how is your life different than your parents or grandparents? Culture tells me about everything. The wind, the rain, the sun, the morning dew, the evening down. The third question is, what traditions from the past do you still continue to practice? Tradition tells me I live with everything around me, my home, my livestock, my land, and the water.
She talks about eating with pottery, not eating with metal plates. She always uses pottery, and she sits on the floor and crosses her legs. And she lives in a hogan. That is their traditional home.
Do you remember the day that you took Ruth's photograph?
I remember the day I photographed every one of these people. I'm good friends with many of them.
Why don't you choose another that we can have Gary read from?
So, Tiffany Prater, and her boyfriend was Thomas Tiger, who is just on the next page. Now, he talks about his life being a lot more dangerous. Tiffany doesn't talk about that. And Thomas Tiger was killed in an accident. But his words are very succinct and also very strong.
Let's hear one from Thomas, and then we'll do one from Tiffany.
Good idea. Do you have a specific memory that stands out from your mind when you were young? Trust no one. I'm learning to get past that one. No real parental memories.
Right.
So we're going to talk about Tiffany, and she's from the Cheyenne Arapaho tribe. Her date of birth was 1978, and it says these photographs were taken 1996, 1997. What traditions of the past do you still continue to practice? While attending Haskell Indian Nations University, I began to learn how to dance Fancy Shawl. It's a contemporary move rather than for contest. The regalia worn by the dancer is represented by symbols of the dancer's tribe. I have also had the pleasure in participating in a peyote meeting while living on campus.
Dr. Auerbach, something we haven't really talked about is your history with photography.
So when I started out with photography, I was working with 35 millimeter cameras. But as I worked with large format, it changed. Making a photograph using platinum, palladium, metal salts instead of silver. Silver oxidizes. So the platinum palladium does not oxidize. So my images will last 1,000 years, not 50 or 80 or 100.
I spoke with Dr. Gary Auerbach and Gary Hoffman about the book We Walk in Beauty. We have some examples of Dr. Auerbach's portraiture on the Spotlight page at azpm.org. Next, essayist Chris Dashiell looks at a film from Mexico that will be shown next week at the Fox Tucson Theater. No Nos Moveran, or in English, We Shall Not Be Moved, the debut feature from director Pierre Saint-Martin. It has won many awards and is Mexico's submission for Best International Feature at the Academy Awards in March. Dashiell is an outside contributor to this show, and his opinions are his own.
The movie opens with real-life footage of a rally with chants and signs and speakers, and then we see a helicopter overhead, soldiers charging, gunshots, and screaming. I figured that this footage is from the infamous massacre of hundreds of student demonstrators by the Army in October of 1968 in Mexico City. A little while later in the film, a reference to the year confirmed that I was correct. Many Americans don't know it, but this terrible event has haunted the culture and politics of Mexico ever since. After this short prelude, the story begins in the present, with an old woman, a widow named Socorro, played by veteran actress Luisa Huertas. She's a retired lawyer who will still provide occasional advice to poor people who need it. Socorro is blunt, no nonsense, often ill-tempered. She lives with her sister in an apartment crowded with old books and papers, is in poor health and on medication, and is visited occasionally by her son and his wife. One day a man turns up and hands her a folder of information that his father had collected for her. We then learn a tragic story. Socorro's brother had been one of the students killed in the massacre, and this had shattered her life. Determined to find the soldier who killed him, she eventually dug up a photo showing her brother, clearly after being tortured, surrounded by army men with one officer in the photo prominently holding the beat-up kid like a trophy. This is the man she's been looking for. Now, this folder that she's been given reveals the soldier's name. The folder also contains something else unusual, a gun. It seems clear that she's planning to enact some retribution on her brother's killer. How exactly is not evident. Yet surprisingly, the revenge angle is not the main thrust here. As we watch Socorro interact with people in her life, we realize that the shock and trauma of having her brother murdered by the state has never left her mind. and has affected everyone close to her, especially her son, who's afflicted by a sense of his own unworthiness and the futility of life. But his wife, her daughter-in-law, Lucia, played by Agustina Quincy, represents a ray of hope. Socorro is able to talk honestly with her, recognizing in her, perhaps, a resemblance to her younger self. However, as the film follows Lucia, we can see that her ability to deal with this family drama is being severely tested. Luisa Huertas has had a long and illustrious career in film and television. This seems like a culminating performance for the 74-year-old actress. She holds us in her steady gaze, sometimes lost in pain, sometimes sharp and resourceful. The performance makes the grief manifest, and there's also a bit of wry humor born of her character's weariness with the stories other people tell about life. Another minor character note is that she smokes, even though her son berates her for it. And as the story goes on and tensions increase, a couple of people in her family orbit start to smoke themselves. Hers is a life of stressful vigilance, of which her also aged sister asks, "Is this all worth it?" Socorro's young brother, we find, was a student activist, committed to the movement. The movie's title, we learn eventually, is the name of his favorite protest song, popular in the 60s. The picture thus speaks to a loss of the idealism that song represents, and asks how we can come to some kind of meaningful acceptance today. We Shall Not Be Moved is a dark, beautiful film with a powerful lead performance at its center. I'm Chris Dashiell, and this is Arizona Spotlight.
Cinema Tucson will present a screening of the film on Wednesday, November 19th at 7 p.m. at the Fox Tucson Theater. Playing in a rock band is a dream for many, but realizing that dream comes with many challenges. The story of Clay Dudash illustrates this. He's now part of a quartet called the Manor, and they're playing at the downtown DUSK Music Festival over the weekend. Dudash's musical dream finally seems to be coming true, and a lot of that has to do with changes in his attitude, as he will explain.
When people ask genre, I just say like indie rock. The EP that is out right now is recorded all by me. I went to my mom's house to go record it after I quit my previous job. It's like upbeat, kind of moody. I have a band now, and we're writing as a band.
When was it in your life, like how old were you when you decided that you were actually going to make a go at being a hopefully professional musician?
Probably 16. I got really into like indie post-punk revival bands from around the same time. It's like, God, 08, 09. So I got really into like Block Party, Arctic Monkeys, going back to 80s bands. I got really into The Clash. This is when YouTube was like a little bit more lawless. Like people would just upload, rips of old performances on BBC and stuff. And I'd watch people play like Glastonbury. And I was like, I mean, if they could do that, I think I could probably do that. This is a job. Okay, cool. Like I'd ask classmates, because when you're in high school, everybody's like, what are you going to do? Which college are you going to go to? People would be confused about where they wanted their future to be, and I was dead set on I'm going to be a musician, and without any idea of like how difficult or when you're young and you say that, everybody's like, that's cool, and then the older you get, people are like, oh, you're still doing that music thing, huh? All right, great.
In an interview that was published in the Tucson Weekly with you, Clay, I heard you talk about a deal that you made with yourself about age and success.
Yeah, in my 20s, I thought that if I don't make it by like 25, that I would think of doing something else. And then 25 happened, and then I was like, all right, I'll give it till I'm 30. And then 30 happened, and I was like, let's just not worry about it. If something nice happens, great. And if not, it's just sort of a realization that making music is more of like a biological need for me than like a money-making endeavor. And I think when I was young, you just think things are going to work out for yourself, like in your early 20s, you wake up and you're good looking without any effort, and you never get sick.
Some people are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. if you're delusional, maybe like me, I was like, man, this is never going to change. But I realized that holding on to some sort of deadline is just silly, and I'm happy playing music, and that's really what I should be worrying about the most.
Did you take some time off?
I did, yeah. COVID happened. You were there.
Yeah.
And
My fault.
Yeah. And I got furloughed and laid off, and
double whammy.
double, dude. Yeah, triple. I was like, we can't even leave the house either. I mean, I thought live music was over, understandably, because it seemed like it was. And we still haven't fully recovered, I think. But I sold a bunch of gear to worry about finances and stuff, and I just thought, we're not doing it again. It was pretty dark in that way.
Well, you described making music as being a biological need for yourself. So how do you think that experience of deciding that you were going to have to put those dreams on possibly permanent hold, what did that do to you emotionally?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've always sort of been what I thought is like pretty depressive, but I realized that my environment also plays a huge part in that, and I wouldn't know if I would describe myself as that today. Here's the other thing. I can't really allow myself to have hobbies without thinking of them as like a money-making thing. So I just started playing video games a lot during COVID, and I was like, all right, this is going to be my new job somehow. Like I would make content or something. But it's just not authentic to me. That doesn't fit. Like I'm not really expressing myself. And not that I feel like everybody needs to hear everything that I do, but, you know, in a way of just having some catharsis, I wasn't having any. So when things opened back up with my old band, we started rehearsing again, but things were just different. Everybody's in a different place of life. Everybody started having children. Things didn't feel cohesive. Like we were just doing it because we were doing it. We weren't really able to write new material very efficiently or if at all. Then we just sort of stopped altogether. Then in September, I applied for an arts grant, didn't get it, and I realized, like, look, even if I don't get it, I have to leave my current job and do something that makes me happier.
Yeah, you said something right near the beginning when you were talking about recording the EP yourself. You said you did it at your mom's house. Nothing wrong with that, but how did your mom feel?
Oh, she enjoyed it.
She's supportive?
Yeah, maybe too much so. I feel like my mom is blindly optimistic about everything I'm doing, and not that I haven't accomplished some stuff. And like my dad's side of the family is a little bit more pessimistic about, you know, like my dad frequently tells me that the post office is hiring. He called me yesterday and was like, hey, you know, El Rio's hiring. You should check it out. And then, you know, part of me is like, well, if all you guys came to the shows and bought some CDs, I wouldn't really need to worry so much about getting a job at the post office.
Tell me about the DUSK Festival and what it means to be playing as a part of it this year.
I've played DUSK before in a previous band. We
won. You were going to say in a previous life.
In a previous life. This is going to get real deep, deep and ethereal. But we won the first DUSK Battle of the Bands.
That's impressive.
In the previous group I was in. And now that I'm older, I have much less ego about myself, and I don't really feel like I need to prove anything, which might be counterintuitive to what I'm trying to pursue, because it is a little bit like, well, make sure you're staring at me still. But I've just been asking for what I want, and if people say no, who cares? And I've just kind of been living by that. And that's how we were able to to get on DUSK. But I would like to think, hopefully, that it's because I'm also working hard at trying to get out there that people are saying yes to us. And we're excited to play. The way I describe DUSK to people is like, it's like Coachella, but for Tucson, you know. And when I say that to like family members or acquaintances, they're like, oh, nice. Yeah, that sounds good. So, yeah.
What's Coachella? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, now tell me what Coachella is.
Yeah. Break that down for me. Yeah. What does it look like? My guest was singer and guitarist Clay Dudash. His band, the Manor plays at the DUSK Music Festival on Sunday, November 16th at 2:15 p.m. on the Discovery stage. Thank you for listening to Arizona Spotlight. This show is a production of AZPM. The production engineer is Jim Blackwood. I'm producer and host Mark McLemore.
AZPM's original productions are made possible in part by donations from listeners like you. Learn more at support.azpm.org. Thank you.